you had one thing that you wanted to convince or tell Republicans that you think they're just not getting, what would it be?
I think they're not understanding the residual impact of healthcare reform. I think that they're looking at the price tag of the bill and not realizing the economic impacts that would spin off of this bill. First of all, if people start getting primary care, you lower the burden on emergency rooms, you lower costs throughout the system. If it's cheaper for companies to insure people, you'll see less outsourcing of jobs overseas.
I would say that what I would want Democrats to know, I would say one is that, Republicans are not ogres, the evildoers that, money is everything, that everything everything's going to be driven by, cost cutting, and some MBA is going to be looking over your chart and calculating, what's the cost benefit analysis of you being alive or not. But I think we have to get realistic too. I think all of us do. I think there comes a point where we have to be realistic about what we're able to afford to, we don't have unlimited money, we don't have unlimited resources, and I think both sides have to be very realistic about what we want, what we can accomplish in healthcare, especially if we try and do some major overhaul to this system. So I would say that's a big thing, is that we're not interested in people being sick and not helping them. But I also think, what are the costs of putting in a nationalized healthcare system? I would venture to say that we might lose a lot of innovation in the way of new drugs, new innovation, new technologies that may have, that are driven by, capitalism. People trying to make a profit, but they can still help people out by accomplishing. And by vilifying that, I don't think, that doesn't solve our problems. There's a lot of people that have been saved by just pure, innovation.
Well, anytime you introduce massive reform of any industry, whether it's what they want to do with financial services or this healthcare proposal, there will be transitional issues. First of all, I think people need to realize that the reform doesn't take place January 1st of next year. It's not instantaneous. So there is a transitional period. Secondly, we need to change the way we compensate doctors. A lot of times you'll see people coming out of med school and picking high-end specialties because that's where they're compensated higher. There is no money in being a primary care physician. In the reform plans, that becomes a more lucrative opportunity. Third, we also have to remember that healthcare reform isn't just one program by itself. It's part of a comprehensive reform of our economy. It's part of Obama's larger legislative agenda, which also includes many programs to make higher education more affordable. One of the things that drives doctors to seek the higher end specialties as opposed to primary care is the amount of student loan debt that they come out of med school with. So while you may see in the first year or two, you may see a little bit of that issue of delays in getting appointments, in the shortage of doctors and nurses. I think over time, by year 3, I think that problem will have taken care of itself.
Well, I think right now, I think we don't even have enough nurses right now necessarily. So I remember the last few years, one of the professions that has continually needed people in was nursing. Actually, it's very difficult, even though it's a 2-year program. I know in a lot of instances where you become the initial steps to becoming a nurse, it's still a very rigorous and tough program. So it's not an easy thing where you can kind of say, well, I'm not going to go to college, I'm going to go to this 2-year nursing and make money. It's a very challenging program, but I've always noticed that's the one thing that stayed consistent in employment, hospitals needing nurses. And doctors, that I think it could change. I think it depends. It depends on the motivation of the people that want to be doctors. I know it's easy to say, well, people should want to be doctors because they want to help people. Well, there is the incentive, to make money too. I think that is a legitimate incentive, especially how hard it is to become a doctor. And just, I mean, it's a very, talk about a rigorous, you know, just academic program. You spent, you know, the first, you know, 20 some years of your life in school anyway. Now you add 6 years of that, you add residency of that, huge loans and costs that are associated with that. So I think, you know, I think depending on how a public option would be handled, it could possibly scare people away from becoming a physician if, you know, if part of that attraction is the money. And I think, you know, in our society, being a doctor is a status symbol. You have an awful lot of power, and you know, you also have a lot. You know, there's also potential to make a good money if you're very good at what you do. If you pick a specialty, you know, that people need. So nursing, I don't know. I mean, I think it's still, you know, I don't know if it'll affect nursing as much because it's always been something I think we've needed to shore up our nursing ranks. But doctors, I think it could. I could think it could affect that.